Welcome to Beyond the Sketch. I'm Brittany Harris. Today we're talking about the ultimate multiplier, one that drives profit, but maybe not in a way that you'd expect. My guest is Erika Duda, founder of InsureQuest, a company rewriting how the insurance world grows. With 2 decades of experience, a background in psychology, and known for building killer systems that save you time, energy, money, and stress. Without further ado, welcome Erika to the show.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. And I love that introduction. I'm like, yes, like all of that, yes.
On that note, can you tell the audience a little bit more about who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, I'm Erika Duda. I am a 20-year veteran to the insurance industry. Like most people, I didn't set out to get into insurance. It just kind of fell into my lap. I saw a job that looked really interesting. So I applied, and 20 years later, here I am. I've spent about 10 years of that working directly for insurers, some of the greatest insurance companies out there, and then 10 years in the independent space. So I was able to really see the differences when it came to how companies train, how adjusters were poised for their positions, and that ultimately led me to create InsureQuest.
Can you help me understand how training is the missing profit center?
First of all, training is not a department. And I think that's the biggest misnomer. It is a true system. And if you look at organizations, they are all built on knowledge. So every internal communication, every process, every change, it all starts with knowledge that is brought into the organization, refined, synthesized, whatever corporate jargon you want to apply to that, and then shared with the people that do the work. So that exchange is learning. So if you look at organizations, every single aspect of it includes learning. When organizations focus on just training someone into a role and then stop, that's where they miss those opportunities for profitability. The best organizations that truly have really good onboarding, really good engagement, drive retention, employees stay there longer. As every organization knows, it's expensive to hire. Every new hire, you have to go through that entire process. Then you have the additional payroll to get them up to speed. Employees want to generally do well. And if they're not given the tools and knowledge to do their jobs well, they're going to go elsewhere. So that, and again, drives retention.
You've defined that training is not a department. So if we were to break it down, how would you define effective training for an independent adjusting firm?
So effective training for, like, let's say an independent adjusting firm starts with onboarding and orientation. When we work with organizations, those two pieces seem to be where we make the most improvement right away. A lot of firms have a slideshow that they go through. We try to turn that into as many asynchronous modules as possible. So creating quick videos, creating an LMS that actually gives the tools to go through that. So it's created once and you can apply it over and over again.
If I gave you 48 hours to rebuild a company's onboarding process, what stays and what goes?
There's probably going to be like a 200 slide PowerPoint somewhere, and that's going to go.
Get out of here.
Get out of here. But yeah, it's the biggest thing with onboarding and with orientation is getting the adjuster the right tools and an understanding of where to find the knowledge they need to do their job and then to walk through the process that they need to do. It's not about memorization. You're not going to memorize every single thing, but just orienting them literally into like, okay, here's how you log in. Here are the processes. Let's go through them. Here are the people you need to connect with. Everything else, becomes, it's either superfluous and it can go away, or it gets turned into like a just-in-time tool that they can access later on if they need to reference it for additional information.
What would you say is the one thing that most organizations misunderstand about learning and development?
First of all, I think it's going back to they treat it like a department, and that the focus is on getting people up to speed with the position. I see a lot of smaller organizations try to save on budget by splitting roles, having the manager perform those training duties, having like the QA performing those duties. And I think that there can be some potential issues with that. Having been a claim manager, first of all, I would love to meet a claims manager out there that has time, because I sure didn't. It was every single weekend I was doing reports. So to add training onto that, let's say you do have an influx of claims, where's the priority going to fall? It's not going to fall to, let me sit here and improve my training. It's going to be like, no, we have production needs. We need to get these claims out. So I think that is probably the thing that I see, is just focusing on training as getting adjusters up to speed. And we have someone here that's a subject matter expert. Let's throw them into this role.
Now, you speak on neurodiversity. How does neurodiversity strengthen a claims team?
I'm very openly neurodivergent, and I'm late diagnosed neurodivergent too, which was super fun to find out.
Can we get a definition on exactly what neurodivergent means to you?
Sure. So neurodiversity, it's an umbrella term that includes autism, ADHD, dyslexia, OCD, a bunch of different things. But essentially, your brain works differently than what a neurotypical brain would process information. So there's a difference on how information, stimuli, whatnot are being processed. I speak on neurodiversity just as, personal, but I'm certainly not a neurodivergent, diversity expert. There's plenty of people out there that are fabulous at that, but just some quick examples. So people that have autism, for example, it may be more difficult for them to switch gears really quickly. So if you have a plan in place, like, okay, we're going to meet at 5, then we're going to do this. And at 4:45, you're like, hey, actually, we're going to do XYZ. They may have a difficult time switching really quickly. So just having an understanding of that and being able to accommodate and just know that, like, okay, if we're going to make a change, we got to let them know a little bit more ahead of time and give them some notice.
And I ask that from a personal place as well. I have twins. I don't post them, but I do post that they have autism spectrum disorder. So it did make me want to know, okay, when she's offering training, do you identify how a person learns and you try to put systems in place that helps everyone along these spectrums?
There are definitely tools that are already embedded, because I do a lot of the training with me in mind. We try to, keep it broad so that everyone has something. I have someone that I partner with that is an expert in looking through and ensuring that it's disability accessible and whatnot. So we do take that seriously.
Let's switch gears for a second. Every industry has its blind spots. So let's kind of call out what's real versus what's noise. So, with that in mind, what is one common myth about training that you often run into?
I mean, I think the biggest common myth is that it is a nice to have versus a necessity. And I actually heard that from a potential client. We're going through the process and he's like, well, this is really nice to have, but right now we're in a position of XYZ. And I see it as layoffs continue. And I see a lot of really talented learning and development folks, getting laid off. And that seems to be kind of the first place to look is, okay, this is not essential.
Understood. So the big myth would be it's nice to have, or it's not essential.
Yeah, it's not essential. And then if I were to have to give a second one, I would say that training is not an 8-hour class and then you're good to go for multiple reasons. Cognitive load, your brain's ability to absorb information. You can only learn a couple of things at a time. So if you don't stagger, if you don't chunk information, you remember it. Ebbinghouse's learning curve suggests that after a day, you lose about 75% of what you've learned. So you can spend that whole day, you can spend thousands of dollars to go into a classroom, bring everyone in, and they're not going to remember it the next day. And it's like, there's so much good information. It's like, how do you retain it? How do you bring it back to your actual work?
I was listening to something last week and it was talking about like our cognitive load with our brain, and that our brain is like a bathtub. And so you can keep putting stuff in there, it's going to overflow and you can take no more new information. So you have to monitor your bathtub if you want to retain anything.
Exactly. There's actually a reason why they chose 7 numbers for our phone numbers and why there's a dash between, because you're more likely to remember those numbers as chunks of 3 and 4 than a 7-digit all in one.
I've learned something new today. That was awesome. You've probably seen this 100 times. Where do companies confuse activity with impact?
Ooh, that's a good one, because in my head, I just immediately went to the visual of like the guy that used to like walk around the office really quickly, just looking, he's consistently busy.
Yes.
But never got anything done. I used to sit through meetings where the executive would talk for an hour, and at the end, nothing was accomplished. From a training perspective, there's a lot of really great training out there. And then there's a lot of training that's built because they think that's what the solution is. And one of the ways that we actually combat that is there's a process called action planning, where you actually take a look at the business problem and work from there. And so I've actually told people like, hey, I know you came to me for training, but what you're describing is not a training issue. It's an environmental issue. I could have just said yes and produced all this training and gave it to them, and everyone goes through this training and everything's great, but it wouldn't have solved the business problem at hand.
As a change of pace, we typically like to do something fun with our guests here on Beyond the Sketch. So this is called our lightning round.
I said some things the last time I was in the lightning round, so we'll see.
Let's go. What's one rule you live by?
Treating people how you would want to be treated is a big one for me.
What's one bad habit the industry won't quit?
Nepotism.
Yep.
Nepotism.
I support you on that.
Stop hiring your cousin Bobby to be a claims manager. Like, he's never been an adjuster.
What's one book that made you rethink everything?
I loved The Subtle Art of Not Giving a... I loved that book. Thank you.
And what's one thing that you make unreasonably simple for your clients?
One of the best pieces of feedback that I've ever gotten in my role is taking complex insurance concepts and being able to simplify them so that anyone could understand them. And that to me was like, I'm like, okay, so cool, I've arrived. Like, I can retire now.
So if we were to zoom out, you've spent years reshaping how this industry learns and how it leads. So we like to ask this question here. If there was a billboard that every insurance professional would see tomorrow morning, what would you like this billboard to say and why?
It's what you do after the mistake that counts.
Love it. It's what you do after the mistake that counts. Here's what stood out to me from today's conversation with Erika. Training done right doesn't just teach. It builds confidence and it builds results that last. That's it for today's episode of Beyond the Sketch. I'm Brittany Harris, and this episode was powered by Sketch My Roof, where we believe every adjuster, carrier, and contractor deserves access to same-day roof measurements. Erika, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you guys on the next one.